She walked into the pit herself. No one pushed her. No one dragged her. She stepped in, lay down, folded her hands across her chest, and looked up at the sky one last time. And the last thing the village of Ebole saw before the soil covered her face was her smiling. Not the smile of someone who had accepted their fate. The smile of someone who knew something they didn't. 3 days later, it rained. The whole village ran outside screaming, laughing, holding their children up to the sky. 7 years of drought. Finally over. Finally done. And then Elder Dora looked at his palm. The rain was red. Not rust. Not mud. Blood. Warm. Thick. Smelling of copper and rage. And somewhere beneath the Iroko tree, under 6 feet of soil, something was still breathing. Stay with me. Because what happens next will make you question everything you think you know about sacrifice, justice, and who gets chosen to suffer. This is the story of Amara. And it is not what you think it is. You need to understand what 7 years without rain actually means. It does not mean inconvenience. It does not mean dry skin and shorter showers. It means you dig your fingers into soil that was once black and rich and alive and pull out dust. No moisture. No life. Nothing. It means you watch your cattle lie down one morning and never get up. It means you bury your youngest child, and you cannot even cry properly, because your body has run out of water to make tears. That was Ebole. 7 years of a sky that looked down at them like a flat white eye, unblinking, unmoved, indifferent. The river Oba, gone. A ghost of cracked clay where water used to sing. They had tried everything. Sacrifice goats until the shrine ran red. Dance for 3 days without stopping. Pray to the old gods. Pray to the new god in the whitewashed church. Pray to anyone, anything, that would listen. The sky said nothing. So in the 7th year, Chief Okon did what desperate men always do when their own solutions have failed. He sent for someone else to take the blame for whatever came next. He sent for the diviner. He came at midnight. As diviners always do. He was ancient in the way that certain things are ancient, not just old, but layered. His eyes were completely white. No pupils. No iris. Just white, like 2 small moons pressed into his skull. Around his neck, bones, cowries, dried herbs. And one thing nobody in that circle ever talked about afterward. Something that looked unmistakably like a dried human finger. Threaded on a cord. He sat before the fire. He opened his leather pouch. He cast his divination seeds across the mat. He looked at them. Cast again. Looked. Cast a 3rd time. And stared at the pattern for so long that Elder Dora leaned forward and said, "Baba. What do you see?" The diviner looked up slowly. "The earth is thirsty," he said. "But not for water. Blood called this drought. And only blood can end it. A virgin. Pure. Born in this village. She must be buried alive beneath the sacred Iroko tree before the next new moon. The rain will come when she stops breathing." Chief Okon's voice was barely above a whisper. "Buried, alive. The earth does not want a corpse," the diviner said flatly. "It wants a living gift." He stood up. Gathered his things. And walked back into the dark. And not one man in that circle called him back. Not one. Now here is the part of this story I need you to pay attention to. Because this is where the real crime happens. Not at the Iroko tree. Not in the pit. Right here. In this next moment. The elders met the following morning to choose the girl. And there were others. Daughters of men with land, with cattle, with brothers who would stand at a door with a machete before they let anyone near their child. But the name that kept coming back, the name that the silence kept returning to, was Amara. 17 years old. Father dead since she was 12. Brothers taken by the drought. Mother so broken by grief she had stopped speaking entirely. No one to fight for her. No one to make the elders uncomfortable. No one to make the cost of choosing her feel real. They did not choose Amara because the gods demanded her. They chose her because she was the easiest girl to lose. If you have ever been chosen to carry something because no one thought you mattered enough to protect, keep watching. Because Amara had one move left. And nobody saw it coming. Elder Dora came to her compound at dawn. He could not look at her. He stared at a point somewhere past her left ear and said, Amara. The gods have spoken. You have been chosen. Before the new moon you will be, when? She said. He blinked. What? When does it happen? 4 days. She nodded once. Then you should go. He left. And she stood in the doorway of her mother's compound and looked out at the cracked earth and the skeleton trees and the flat white sky. And she did not scream. Did not collapse. Did not run. She went inside. And began to braid her own hair. That night Zora came. She arrived with her eyes swollen nearly shut from crying, grabbed Amara's hands and said, You have to run. Tonight. Go to your mother's people in Ikore. I will tell them you left. I will say I don't know where, Zora. Please. Please listen to me. You don't owe these people anything, Zora. Stop. How are you so calm right now? How are you sitting here braiding your hair like, because if I stop, Amara said quietly, I will start shaking and I will never stop. I am terrified. I am more afraid than I have ever been in my life. But I am not running. Why? Zora's voice cracked. Give me one reason that makes sense. Because they are wrong, Amara said finally. And I already know they are wrong. And if I run, I spend the rest of my life being someone who survived by disappearing. I don't want to disappear, Zora. I want them to have to look at what they did. 3 days passed. On the first day Amara visited the river, the dry, pale scar of what had been the river Oba. She sat at its edge for a long time. Not crying. Memorizing. On the second day she walked through the village. Saying nothing. Just looking. At the huts. At the children. At the elders who turned their faces away as she passed. She saw all of it. And she kept walking. On the third day she sat with her mother, who still had not spoken, and held her hand in silence for 6 hours. Her mother never looked at her. And on the last night of her life, Amara lay on her mat and spoke to no one in particular. Or maybe to everything. I know you are there, she whispered. Whatever you are, whatever lives in the earth and the sky and the spaces between, I know you are listening. And I want you to hear me say this clearly. This is not a gift. I am not giving myself. I am being taken. And there is a difference. And I need you to remember the difference. But here is what nobody knew. What the village would not discover until it was too late. The diviner had been to Ebole once before. 20 years ago. When Amara's father was still alive. And her father had refused him something. Remember that detail about the diviner and Amara's father. Because that thread is about to pull everything apart. Don't go anywhere. They dressed her at sunrise. White wrapper. White beads. White chalk drawn in lines down her face and arms, the markings of the sacred. They offered. They consumed. The village women bathed her and sang the old death songs. 3 of them could not finish. Their voices simply stopped mid-word, like a candle going out. Amara stood in the center of it all and led them. She was somewhere else already, not broken, but focused. The way people become focused when they have decided something completely. She ate her last meal slowly. Pounded yam. The last of the palm soup. She ate every single bite. Her mother never came out of the hut. That was the only moment Amara's composure nearly failed. She stood outside the hut door for a long time. Her hand reaching toward the doorway, and dropping. Reaching, and dropping. She did not go in. She turned. And walked toward the Iroko tree. The whole village came. Even the ashamed ones came. Shame is not enough to keep people away from the things they allow. The procession moved in silence through the dead village, past the dry river, past the hollow animal pens, past the bare fields, until the ancient Iroko tree rose up before them. Massive. Older than memory. Its roots like the buried hands of giants. And at its base, the pit. Narrow. Deep. Exactly the shape of a girl. Amara walked to the edge and stopped. And turned around to face the crowd. She looked at them. All of them. One by one. She took her time. Elder Dora. Chief Okon. The women who had dressed her. The men who had dug the pit and could not meet her eyes. Zara, shaking, being held upright by two women. She opened her mouth. Elder Dora stepped forward immediately. There will be no last words. The gods require. I am not speaking to the gods, Amara said. The crowd went completely still. I am speaking to you. She looked directly at Elder Dora. I see you. I see all of you. And I need you to know, I see you. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Then she turned, and stepped into the pit herself. Before anyone could touch her. She lay down. Folded her hands across her chest. Looked up at the sky one final time, that flat, white, merciless sky. And she smiled. That smile. The one nobody could explain afterward. The one that looked, disturbingly, like she already knew how this story ended. The soil went over her. Feet. Knees. Waist. When it reached her chest, those nearest heard her take one long, deep, deliberate breath. Like someone filling themselves up completely before going underwater. Chest. Shoulders. Throat. Zara began to scream. 6 people grabbed her. She fought all 6 of them. She kept screaming even after her voice became something that was no longer a sound a human throat should make. And then the earth covered Amara's face. And the village of Ebole stood over that mound in complete silence. And the only sound was Zora, still fighting, and the hollow wind moving through the bones of the Iroko tree above them. 3 days. They waited 3 days. And on the 3rd morning, the sky changed. Not gradually. All at once. Like a door swinging open. The flat white void cracked and darkened. A deep rolling sound moved across the horizon from the east, like thunder waking up from a long sleep. People ran out of their huts. Children who had never seen a storm in their lives stood in the open with their arms out, and they were laughing. This pure, uncomplicated, devastating laughter of children who have only ever known drought, and suddenly the sky is doing something extraordinary. Elder Dara walked out and tilted his face up and closed his eyes, and the first drop fell directly onto his cheek. He stood there, with the expression of a man receiving something he had prayed for 7 years. Then he opened his eyes. And looked at his palm. The rain came down fully. All of it. All red. It ran down the rooftops in rivers. It soaked into the cracked earth and turned it dark and wet and glistening and wrong. It fell on the white garments of the elders who had made the decision, and the white turned red from the shoulders down. And not one of them could lift their hands to cover themselves. The children stopped laughing. One by one, not understanding, just feeling, they stopped laughing. And some of them began to cry. This was not a blessing. The sky was not celebrating. The sky was mourning. And somewhere across the village Zora looked up at the sky and whispered, Amara. She ran. She reached the mound before anyone could stop her and fell to her knees in the red mud and started digging with her bare hands. Amara. Amara, I am here. Tearing at the earth, her fingers bleeding, Amara, please. 6 people dragged her back. She beat one of them. She kept screaming even after her voice became something that was no longer a sound a human throat should make. Elder Dora appeared beside her. And Zora, bleeding, red-soaked, wild-eyed, turned on him and said, You got your rain. He said nothing. You got your rain, Elder. So why is it bleeding? The red rain fell on his face and ran down like tears he wasn't making himself. He had no answer. The red rain fell for 7 days. Because she had been owed 7 years. On the 5th day, a young boy pressed his ear to the mound beneath the Iroko tree. When his father came to drag him away, the boy looked up with an expression too old for his face and said, She is still talking. He would never say what she was saying. Not for the rest of his life. On the 3rd day, the diviner's hut was found empty. Mats folded. Every bone, every cowrie, every cord, gone. Vanished. As if he had packed quietly in the night and simply ceased to exist. But here is what Zara found when she searched his hut. Hidden beneath a loose stone in the floor, a small wrapped bundle. Inside it, a carved figure of a man. And beside it, a carved figure of a small girl. With a cord tied around her throat. And carved into the base of the man figure, a name. Amara's father's name. The diviner had not come to Ebole because the god sent him. He had come to collect a debt. 20 years ago Amara's father had exposed the diviner as a fraud, had stopped him from taking a young boy as sacrifice and driven him from the village in shame. The diviner had sworn to return what was owed. And when the drought gave him his opportunity, he walked back in. And used the village's desperation to take the one thing that would hurt most. He had named Amara specifically. The gods had asked for nothing. She knew. She knew it was not the gods. And she went anyway. I need you to sit with that for a second. And then stay with me, because the village of Ebole is about to have to face something they can never undo. On the 7th day the red rain stopped. And in the silence that followed, a sound rose from the earth beneath the Iroko tree. Soft. Low. Constant. Weeping. Not wind. Not animal. The specific, intimate sound of a person crying quietly in a room they thought was empty. Coming from underground. From beneath the mound. Chief Okon called the assembly. He stood before his village, older than he had been 2 weeks ago, aged by something that wasn't time, and said just 4 words. What have we done? Not a question. A confession. The village women stood on one side of the square. The elders on the other. The space between them was not distance. It was judgment. Mama Ada stepped forward from the women's side. She was not young. She was not loud. And she did not raise her voice once. We buried a girl, she said. A girl with no father, no brothers, no one powerful enough to make us feel the cost of losing her. We buried her and called it holy. And the sky rained blood for 7 days and we are standing here trying to decide if that means something. She looked at the elders one by one. The man who told you to do this is gone. He packed his things and disappeared the moment the rain came down wrong. And Amara is in the ground. So let me ask you something. If the gods truly asked for her, where are the gods now? And if the gods did not ask, then what exactly did we do? Complete silence. Elder Dora opened his mouth. Don't, Mama Ada said quietly. And he closed it. They dug her up that evening. The men who dug would not speak of what they found for the rest of their lives. Their accounts, when they did surface years later, were strange and contradictory, as if the earth had shown each man something specifically shaped for him. What the village agreed on, after, was simple. She was gone. But the earth where she had lain was dark and warm and rich. And in the weeks that followed, from that exact ground, plants grew that no one recognized. Red flowering. Tall. Opening toward the sky like hands. Growing in the shape of a girl with her arms spread wide. From that year forward the rains came. Every season. Clean. Cold. Ordinary and extraordinary all at once. Enough for crops. Enough for the river to remember itself. Enough. But every year, on the anniversary of her burial, one night, the rain fell red. Not long. Not heavy. Just enough. Just enough that no child in Ebole ever grew up without knowing her name. Just enough that every elder who had been in that circle on that night woke up on that anniversary, and lay in the dark listening to it fall on the roof. Red and warm and patient. And had to decide, all over again, what they believed about what they had done. Zara lived to be very old. She never married. She tended the red flowering plants beneath the Iroko tree. And every year on the anniversary she walked out to the mound and sat in the red rain and did not cover herself or go inside. People said she was mourning. She wasn't. A young girl asked her once, "What are you doing out here?" "I am listening," Zara said. She is still talking. Someone has to stay and hear it. The child looked at the red rain soaking into the old woman's clothes and asked, "What is she saying?" Zara was quiet for a long time. "She is saying, I was here. I was real. I had a name and I braided my own hair and I tasted every bite of my last meal and I was not a symbol and I was not a martyr and I was not a sacrifice. I was a girl. And I deserved better." The child sat down beside Zara in the red rain. And she listened too. The elders called it a sacrifice. The gods called it testimony. The earth called it a debt. And Amara never called it anything. She just stepped into the pit herself, before anyone could push her, because that was the only power they had left her. The power to choose how she went. Some places remember her as a martyr. Some remember her as a warning. But in Ebole, where the rain runs red one night a year, they remember her as something simpler and more important than either. They remember her as a girl who was owed better. And they remember, whether they want to or not. Because the earth does not forget what is buried in it. It keeps. It holds. And one day, in its own time, in its own language, it tells. If this story moved you, share it. Because somewhere right now a version of this is still happening. Someone is being chosen to carry something because no one thinks they matter enough to protect. Share this story. And if you want more dark African folktales that cut this deep, subscribe. Because we are just getting started.